you're ready there. Okay. Welcome, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and mute everybody, but unmute yourselves if you have any questions. Please feel free to unmute yourself. That's probably the best place to ask questions, is just unmuting and piping in. We're pretty casual around here. My name's Katie Luvat. Welcome to Sterling Silver Club Yoga Wednesdays. This is the intermediate mat yoga class. Just a reminder, if we are moving around this evening and there's something that I invite you to do that doesn't feel quite right or causes pain or discomfort in your body, please take care of yourself and stop doing whatever it is that I asked you to do. Respect your body, or sometimes it's just backing off a little bit. If we're ever moving around and you need a rest before I invite you to take a rest, take a rest. This is part of practicing one of the main yoga principles. Is a Sanskrit word called ahimsa, which is nonviolence, non-harm, taking good care of our physical body, and also keeping an eye on our self-talk. So, you know, sometimes we'll do some balancing poses, and some days you feel really steady, and some days you might feel a little wobbly, and that's just how things go. Things change. So being kind with ourselves as we're moving through practice is a really good thing to practice. We're going to do a practice this evening that focuses on some releasing neck and shoulder tension and building a strong core, which means, you know, building moving the spine in all of the directions that it moves, into flexion, into extension, some side bending and twisting, but building some strength around our center. And so there you go. We're just going to jump right in. What you need to begin with is some kind of a blanket or a towel that you could roll into a long roll. So you can unfold, if you have a blanket or a towel, you might unfold it so that you've got an edge that you can roll from that's long, that will create a roll that's long enough that you could sit on it and have your hips on one end and your head on the other end. Okay, so that's how long you want it to be. If you're working with a towel, and you might roll a couple towels together, just so you have kind of a fat-ish roll. Mine's like this. And then we all have different shaped spines, and some of us have the thoracic spine, the part of the spine that attaches to your rib cage. It naturally has a convex curve to it. There's a little bit of a roundedness to it, but some of our bodies, it's a little bit more pronounced. And so when you go to lie down on the floor on your back, you might find that your forehead is a lot lower than your chin. And that your cervical spine is hyperextended. And so if that happens for you, you could just take an extra blanket or a towel or a pillow and put that under your head. So here we go. When you lie down, make sure you can reach your arms straight back and you're not gonna run into anything, and you can open your arms out to the side and you're not gonna run into anything. And then your hips are on one end of the blanket, your head's on the other end of the blanket. And notice when you get here, if your forehead is a lot lower than your chin, if it looks something like this, you can give yourself an extra little, maybe you have enough tail to your blanket that you could just curl it under and just bring your forehead and chin level. And then let the arms open out to the side. The palms roll up toward the ceiling. Make sure this feels comfortable for you. If you have a shoulder injury and this doesn't feel okay, you might bolster that shoulder up with another blanket, or put your hand on your belly so that shoulder feels more supported. But if it feels okay, both shoulders there's a sense of them spilling away from the midline of the body. Like you're just letting gravity have the weight of the arms, and the head of the humerus kind of spills toward the floor, and the sternum feels sort of lifted. And we'll take a moment, feet are planted, knees are bent, and enjoy a few slow breaths in and out. You can close your eyes if you feel like it. You could also just soften your gaze if you don't want to close your eyes. Find something to rest your gaze on and soften your eyes. Notice what it feels like to be in your body this evening. The soles of the feet touching the ground, the weight of your arms resting on the ground. And maybe scanning and noticing if you're holding tension anywhere. So you might notice that you haven't completely let go of your arms. You're sort of gripping them a little bit. Maybe your next exhale could invite a little bit more release. Maybe you're holding tension in the jaw and you didn't realize it. Or maybe there's tension between your eyebrows. There's a furrow that could release. And other physical things we can notice in the body are, we could notice if there are any emotions or feelings here. Maybe you had a stressful day, or there's some anxiety, or maybe you had a really joyful day and you just came off of a really sweet conversation. And where do you notice your emotion in your body? Is there a felt sense? And just noticing that. And not needing things to be different than they are, but observing and allowing and remembering the impermanence of things and how they come and go. Maybe sending some breath to wherever that emotion might be in the body. And then when you're ready, take both of your arms and reach them toward the ceiling. So your palms are going to face each other. And when your mind's eye, think about on the back of your rib cage, you have two scapula. They're back here, right? And on your next inhale, can you spread your scapula? Can you spread your shoulder blades away from each other even more so that your fingertips move a little closer to the ceiling? That's called scapular protraction. And then pull the shoulder blades toward your spine, or like you're trying to pinch the blanket with your shoulder blade, and the arms will feel like they're plugging into the sockets or moving toward the ground. And you're trying to squeeze the shoulder blades into the blanket or into the spine. That's protract or retraction. So there's the movement. You're going to move the shoulder blades away from your spine and the arms reach toward the ceiling. And then you're going to, it's like you're plugging your arms into the sockets, and then you're squeezing the shoulder blades into your blanket, and that's called a retraction. So do that a few times. You're not bending the elbows. We're trying to keep those shoulders out of the ears, but we're trying to mobilize our scapula on our rib cage. And that's an important thing to do, and to be able to kind of find the muscles that move the scapula around, because sometimes they get stuck, especially when we do a lot of things out in front of our spine, you know, that pull our heads forward of the spine. The shoulder blades can kind of get stuck rounded forward. It can create a lot of tension in the neck and shoulders. So right now we're kind of warming up the muscles that move the scapula. And then at some point, let's pause. And we're going to bend the elbows in a 90-degree bend. Okay. And so you're going to have your forearms parallel to the ceiling, and we're going to pull the forearms together, maybe on an exhale, so that your palms and the inner elbows and the forearms come together. And that might be exhale. And as you inhale, can you open the arms away from each other? And then on your exhale, can they come back together? So you're just moving through this movement, and this is going to start to stretch open your pectoral muscles, the muscles that run from sternum to upper arm bone, the pec majors mostly here. And so feeling that, moving rhythmically. Okay. And then the next time you open the arms away from each other, pause. And I'm going to have you keep the elbows in line with the shoulder. And internally rotate your left arm. So you might see how I'm doing this. The left arm is going to internally rotate. I'm not forcing it. My palm, this is as far as my palm goes. The head of the shoulder just popped up toward the ceiling a little bit. That's a natural movement. And my other arm is still in external rotation. I'm letting the fingertips, the nails drop toward the floor, the elbows kind of kicking up toward the ceiling. And I'm looking away from the arm that's next to my head. And now I'm going to switch. I'm going to externally rotate my left arm. I'm internally rotating my right arm, not forcing anything. I'm looking away from the left arm. And then I'm going to switch. You're just going to go back and forth. So there's no forcing, but we're trying to find internal and external rotation of the humerus. Your arm bones, those upper arm bones, knit into the shoulder socket. The shoulder socket is part of your scapula. And the other bone that connects to your shoulder girdle is your collarbone. And you might feel very subtly how your collarbones are moving with your upper arm bones. So when you internally rotate, that collarbone rolls down. As the external rotation happens, that collarbone rolls up. So things are happening differently from side to side. And so just one more here, back and forth. And then we're going to come back to the center and we're going to reach both of the arms toward the ceiling. Okay. So reaching both of the arms toward the ceiling, can you take your left arm and reach it back and your right arm and reach it down toward your right foot? And again, you're going to look away from the arm that's next to your head. There's a little hint of a side bend here. And then let the arm switch and look away from the right arm and reach your arms away from each other. Find a little side bend energy and just go back and forth a couple more times. Good. Last couple times. Good. And then when you're ready, come back to the center and just let those arms relax. Notice what it feels like around the shoulder girdle after a bit of movement and attentiveness and care. Notice if your breath has changed. Notice if there's any warmth. And then when you're ready, we're going to roll over off of our support onto one side. And you can press into the floor and just come up for a moment and move the blanket. Unless you're on a hardwood floor and you want some support under you, you can move that blanket roll out of the way and lie back down. Excuse me. And again, if you get down here on your back and your forehead is a lot lower than your chin, and just simply sliding the base of the skull away from your shoulders doesn't bring a levelness, then you're going to put something under your head so that you've got forehead and chin level and a little breezeway under your cervical spine. We're going to find a couple of landmarks. So with your fingertips, can you place your fingertips on your pubic bone? And can you place the heels of your hands on your front hip bones? And we're going to rock our pelvis a little bit. So on an inhale, can you think about your fingertips are on your pubic bone? Can your pubic bone glide toward your tailbone? So the pubic bone glides between your thighs toward your tailbone. You'll feel your lower back arch away from the floor. That's an inhale. And as you exhale, can you rock your pubic bone toward your sternum and feel your navel pull down, feel your lower back flat, and that's an exhale. So we're going to do that a few times. So you're rocking your pubic bone toward your tailbone. The low back arches, that's inhale. And exhaling your pubic bone toward your navel, and the navel pulls down and the low back flattens, and that's the exhale. So go back and forth. Now see if you can move this way and feel that the movement is happening because your low abdominal muscles are firing. And also feel that your inner feet are grounded. So the big toe ball and that, the heel are grounded as you're moving back and forth. And as you try to be aware of the low abdominal muscles engaging to rock your pubic bone toward the navel, to imprint the lower back into the floor, can you also make sure your gluteal muscles are really soft? So we're just focusing on waking up the low abdomen. The glutes, sometimes they want to help here, and it's okay, but right now we're focusing on the low abdominal muscles. Good job. Now find neutral, kind of land right in the middle of those two extremes. You'll feel like you're balanced on the middle of the sacrum. And now find with your hands your low front ribs, and you can kind of trace down your low front ribs and around to the low back ribs. Okay, so you kind of get the sense of where your rib cage is. And we're going to keep the pelvis quiet, and we're going to start to move the rib cage. We're going to be mobilizing the upper lumbar spine and the low thoracic spine. So we're working on spinal mobility and core strengthening right now. Bring your hands behind your head. So the pelvis doesn't move. We're going to move the rib cage and the thoracic spine here. Wrap your elbows just enough so you can see them in your peripheral vision. Feel your head heavy in your hands and imagine you've got a little grapefruit or something under your chin. So you're not going to tuck your chin to your chest. A deep breath in. And on your exhale, can you move your low front ribs towards your low front hips? It's going to curl your head and shoulders off the ground, and feel your low back ribs gliding away from your pelvic rim. And then inhale, slowly lower back down. Do that again. So exhaling, we're trying to isolate the upper abdominal muscles to curl us up. It's not high, so don't think about coming into a huge sit-up. We're just trying to move and mobilize the rib cage here. And as you exhale and pull the front ribs toward the front hips, it allows the mid-back, the upper lumbars and the low thoracic extensor muscles. Sometimes they get really tight depending on how we carry ourselves posturally. So this can allow them to start to release as we're strengthening the upper abdomen. Let's just do one more of these, and you're going to hold yourself curled up with your head heavy in your hands and the elbows wrapping into your peripheral vision. Begin to do your pelvic movements again. Rock your pubic bone toward your navel, and then rock your pubic bone toward your tailbone, and do that a few times. So we're holding this engagement at the upper abdomen. It's not really high. The head's heavy in the hands, and you're just adding those pelvic tilts a little bit. So there's nothing dramatic going on, but we're trying to wake up the low abdomen and wake up the upper abdomen. And so your head and shoulders are off of the ground because your upper abdomen is engaged, not because you're pulling on your head. And then when you're ready, relax everything down. Open your arms out to the side. Let your feet be wider than hip width apart. And windshield wiper your legs to the left, look to the right. And then windshield wiper your legs to the right and look to the left. A little release for the neck, just in case it was trying to work a little bit. Good. Now, when you're ready, bring your knees in, rock them in, bring your hands to your knee caps, and begin to paint circles with your knees on the ceiling. So you're just going to start to circle the legs around. They come in, they pull apart. You press them away, you draw them back together. You might be exhaling them in and apart and inhaling them away and together, and feeling the heads of the femurs moving around in the hip sockets and noticing any sense of stretch through the muscles of the inner legs, and then change directions. Go around a few times the other way. Notice as the legs press away from you how the low back might arch, and as the legs come in toward you, the low back flattens and rounds into the ground. Just noticing that rhythm a little bit. Good. And then set your feet down. Good. Now, we're going to find our band, like your strap, or if you don't have a strap, maybe it's a necktie or a belt. So I'm going to grab my strap, and we're going to use it to provide some external feedback for us. So I'm going to take my band and I'm going to fold it in half once, and then make sure it doesn't have any twists in it. I'm going to fold it in half again. And I want kind of a thick, like, bump that I'm creating. And what I'm going to do, and we've done this before, if you've been with me before in this class, I'm going to palpate. I'm going to use my, so I'm going to just put that down for a second. I'm going to palpate my pelvic rim. In men, your pelvic rim, especially in the back, is a lot higher than in women's. And for all of us, your pelvic rim, you know, if you find your front hip bones in the front and then start to feel around, you'll notice that your pelvis, your ilium, are higher in the back of the body than they are in the front of the body. And in a moment, what we're going to do is lie down, and you're going to have this strap just below your pelvic rim, so that when you lie down, you can feel that strap down there. And again, if you have a forehead that's a lot lower than your chin, you want to give yourself a little support so your cervical spine is neutral. And remember when we were doing that pelvic tilting business, so I want you to engage your low abdomen and rock your pubic bone toward your navel, pull your navel down, and see if you can feel your pelvic rim imprint down into the touch of that strap that's just below your pelvic rim, and hold it. So that's an act, you're holding that isometric contraction. The front ribs are going to knit down, and we're going to bring our legs, both of them, into a tabletop position. And you're going to see if you can maintain that contraction. Use an active exhale, press the pelvic rim into that strap and hold it there. Flex your feet and see if you can keep the pelvis really quiet as you tap the floor with your left heel slowly. And then bring your left knee back into its vertical position next to the right, and keep going with the left leg. So as you move your leg, can you keep using your low abdomen to pull your pelvic rim down into that strap? The abdomen, what might want to happen is everything kind of wants to move as you're moving your legs, but you're just trying to keep everything really quiet. And just do 2 more times on this one leg. If your low back starts to feel like it's working, it is. And so you want to put your feet back down and see if you can reestablish your abdominal engagement, and then you can bring your legs back up and start over. But if you're doing okay here, start with the right leg. Go ahead and go slowly. Tap and come back up. Keep the ribs, the abdomen, everything knitting down a little. This is a posterior tilt to the pelvis. And you know, as you get stronger, you can do this movement with your pelvis neutral, but keeping a little bit of a posterior tilt. That imprinting down of the low back and pelvic rim can help us find our low abdominal muscles. Use an active exhale where you need it to help you find your abdominal engagement. So maybe blowing out some imaginary candles. And then when you're ready, rest. So you're going to set your feet down again. And just one more time, open those arms out to the side. Take the feet a little wider than hip width apart. And then begin to still them to the left, look to the right. And then still them to the right and look to the left. A little release. This is a nice place to kind of open up those hip flexors. Your hip flexors were just getting strengthened there. You may hear often that many of us have tight, short hip flexors, and it's true. And that also, the other truth is that many of us have tight, short, and weak hip flexors. So we want to try to lengthen them. It's because we sit a lot in our culture. There's a lot of sedentariness. Even if we think of ourselves as active, maybe what we do a lot is we ride bikes, and that holds us in this sort of flexed hip position. So this is helping to release and open up the front of the hips. And then we were just working on strengthening those muscles. So now I'm going to have you roll over onto your side, and you can pull that strap out, and you might give yourself a pillow. We're going to lie on our left side. And so flip to whatever end of your mat you need to, so you can be on your left side and see me. And if you could draw an imaginary line, your right ear and your shoulder and your hip and your knee joint and your ankle joint would all be on that line. And I want you to think about firming your shoulder down into the ground and firming this bottom leg down into the ground and lifting your waist up away from the ground. So there's a downward shoulder, there's a downward leg, there's a lifted waist. And then your right hand comes to your pelvic rim. You're going to glide your pelvic rim out of your waist. You're reaching your right leg out of your hip. And here we go. We're going to lift the right leg up, maybe on an inhale. And as you exhale, lower it down. And I want you to think about, as you inhale and lift that leg up, to simultaneously lift your left waist up. That's going to keep your pelvis nice and level. It's going to keep your obliques firing on your side body. So nice and slow, as you're lifting the leg up, think about reaching it out of your hip socket and then lowering it down. We're strengthening our abductors, our outer hips here. David and I were talking about how important it is to have strong outer hips and inner hips, inner legs and outer legs for healthy SI joint. SI joint is the joint your sacrum and your pelvis make as they come together. So the spine comes down, you have your spine, and at the very base of the spine is this wedge-shaped bone called your sacrum, and it wedges into your two hip bones, your ilium. And sometimes that one joint can be really tight, one side can be really tight, and the other side can be kind of mobile, more mobile than we want it to be, and it can be kind of painful. So anyway, this is a nice strengthening movement for the outer hips. Now I want you to pause and point your toes on that top leg. And you're going to think about keeping your ribs and your pelvis nice and quiet and neutral, so they're not flopping around on you. Keep firming the shoulder down and that bottom leg down. And begin to draw a circle, like a little circle with your toes. So there's going to be a little forward movement, a little lift. There's a little bit of backward movement, that's hip extension, and downward movement. And you're just kind of making a little circle. And this might be getting kind of toasty. We're working a little bit here. And it's hard to keep it can be kind of challenging to keep the waist lifted and the ribs and the pelvis from flopping around, but do your best. Now reverse the circle. And the circle can be small, it can get bigger, but if it gets bigger, make sure that you're stabilizing your ribs and your pelvis. The knee and the toes point straight ahead. They might want to kind of turn or rotate on you, but keep them pointing straight ahead. Last couple. This can be a kind of a big deal here. And then rest. And give that hip a little thank you. Give it a rub, give it a thank you. That was some good work. We're going to keep going on this side. And we're also going to bring some shoulder stability and side waist stability into play if you want. So know that the next thing I'm going to talk you into, at any point, you could just come back down and put your head on your pillow. You don't have to be up on your forearm if your neck or your shoulder get tired for any reason. But here's the progression. See if you want to do this with me. We're going to bend the knees. You're going to pretend there's a wall behind you, and that the back of your head and the back of your shoulders and the back of your ribs and the back of your pelvis and the soles of your feet are against that imaginary wall. So that's the alignment. And then your top hand pushes into the floor, and we're going to come up so that you're on your left forearm. See how my elbow is under my shoulder. So my elbow, shoulder, hips, ankles are all in a line. My ears are in line with my shoulders too. I'm not leaning my head forward. Okay, now notice you could kind of schlump here, or you could push the forearm down and pull that scapula down, and then lift your waist away from the floor. That's where we want to be. Now on an inhale, we're going to lift that left or the top knee, the right knee off the bottom knee. And as you exhale, we're going to tap the knees and lift the ankle joints away from each other. And then inhale, ankles tap, the knees lift. And exhale, the knees tap, the ankles lift. Now, the trick is you don't want your pelvis to roll back and forth. It doesn't matter how big this movement is. Make it slow and see if you can keep the pelvis stacked. Exhale, the knees tap. Think about your two front hip bones narrowing and maybe your pelvic floor lifting up, and then inhale, the feet tap. Now check in as you keep going with the legs. What's going on? Is the waist falling? Can it lift up? Can the shoulder draw down the back and out of the ear? And I'm going to add on. Are you ready? So tap the knees, the ankles lifted. Bring your right hand behind your head. Move your head into your hand. And we're going to stretch the leg straight into extension. So it straightens out and it kind of pulls behind us. You'll feel your gluteal muscle engage. Your low abdomen engages so that the pelvis doesn't move too much. As you straighten that leg behind you, see if you can find a little flexion and rotation for the rib cage. The elbow comes toward the fingertips. And then as you inhale, you're going to open back up and bring your knees back to tap. That ankle stays lifted. And then exhaling, extend the leg and flex the spine and rotate the spine, elbow to fingertips. And do that 2 more times. Inhaling, coming up. And exhaling, rotating. Find a little low abdomen. The front ribs might want to flare. Keep them tethered to the front hips. And inhale, opening up. And our last one, exhale, wrap down. Good. And that's it. And we're going to settle. So actually just come up to sit. Stretch your legs out in front of you. Lean back into your hands. Push the floor away, broaden the collarbones. And then just rotate your legs a little bit. Good work. And you may have found that your neck muscles were working a little bit. Well, it's because your head was kind of on a weird position in relationship to gravity. So we were making our neck work a little bit, but it's good to strengthen our neck muscles as long as we're not overusing these upper trapezius muscles, right? So let's do the second side. Go ahead and roll over. Come on to your right side. We're beginning in a side lying mountain pose. So the legs are straight, the knees are straight, the ear and shoulder and hip and knee and ankle are aligned. The bottom leg is firming down, that bottom shoulder is firming down. And you're trying to engage these side waist muscles to lift your waist away from the floor. So the spine's not just hanging, lift. When you're ready, hand on hip, with an inhale, we're gonna lift that left leg up and exhale, lower it down. Now remember, you're thinking about reaching the leg out of the hip as you lift and lower. And as you lift the leg up, can you lift your waist up? So inhaling, lifting, exhaling, lowering. And that's to keep. If you watch me, I'll show you what sometimes happens. We crave a really big movement and we really lift that leg up, but my waist has completely disappeared. The movement didn't come from my femur in the socket. It came from my pelvic rim rolling into my ribs. That's not what we're going for today. So keep your bottom waist lifted. Slowly lift the leg, lower the leg, keep the knees and toes pointing forward because sometimes those rotators, those gluteal rotators want to do it all. And then when you're ready, settle for a moment, point your toes, point, and start to make those small circles. Nice and small. And as you move around, notice the pelvis might want to tip, the ribs might want to flare, the waist might want to collapse. So see if you can keep everything organized, firm that bottom leg down, the bottom shoulder down. And just see if you can keep everything quiet as that leg moves around in circles and then change directions. So also all of these movements really nice as they roll the head of the femur around in its socket, lubricating that joint, getting some synovial fluid to secrete. Shoulders out of the ears, last one here, and then rest. Good job. Now we're going to bend the knees and find that next position. So imagine there's a wall right behind you and you want to feel the soles of your feet, the back of your pelvis, the back of the shoulders and the back of the head on the wall. And then we're going to come up onto that forearm. Okay, remember, you're always welcome to just lie back down if you need a break. Head is, cheekbones shift back to feel the ears in line with the shoulders, in line with the hips and ankles. So you're not rounding forward here. The head's not forward. Everything's organized. The forearm presses down, the scapula hugs down, the waist lifts up. So much nice stability happening here. We're going to lift that left knee off the bottom knee with an inhale. And with an exhale, the knees tap each other, the ankle lifts. So we're going to keep going with this. And I just realized sometimes people have tender bones, like your outer hips If they're feeling like they're grinding into the floor, please put a blanket under you. Give yourself some padding if you need it. Inhale is lateral rotation. Exhale is medial rotation. And think about those two front hip bones narrowing and the pelvic floor drawing up. We'll do that 2 more times, keeping those hips quiet. It's just the femur that's moving. And for some of us, it's a really big movement. And some of us, it's a really small movement because we all have different shaped bones and hip joints and sockets. Now tap the knees, bring your left hand behind your head, move your head into your hand. It's like that reminder, the head is in the headrest, it's in line with the ears. When you're ready, kick, like you're trying to push something that weighs 100 pounds away from you and a little bit behind you with that left leg, straighten through the knee, and then flex the spine wrapped into a twist, elbow to fingertips. And then inhale, knees tap again, and you open back up. And exhaling, you're gonna wrap your elbow toward your fingertips and try to press that leg straight so that you're finding your gluteal muscles, you're finding your quadriceps, we're finding hip extension, we're finding a little thoracic rotation, you're activating your abdominal muscles that help to take your, in this case, left rib closer to your right hip. One more time. Inhaling and opening, and exhaling and extending that hip and rotating. And then when you're ready, release, and we're gonna just sit up again. How about that? Sit up again and give those legs a little shake out. Good. All right, so next, let's come to our hands and knees, okay? You can put a blanket down if you need knee padding. Remember always that if you have wrists that are a little tender, and or that, you know, maybe you have arthritis in the heel of your hands, you could, if you have them, put some blocks down, and you could be on your forearms, but you want to have a nice strong shoulder girdle here. So you're either on blocks on your forearms, and that's for cranky wrists, or your hands are planted, okay? And if the hands are planted, I want you to straighten the elbows. And remember earlier, we were doing some scapular movement. You were drawing the shoulder blades together. You were moving them apart when we were laying on our back. Let's do that now. Different relationship to gravity. You have to maintain a nice, strong, stable core to keep your spine nice and neutral. My head's in line with the back of my heart. My elbows are straight. They're not going to bend. And so here we go. Draw the shoulders out of the ears, and then see if you can squeeze your shoulder blades together on your back body, like they're squeezing the spine, and then spread them away from each other. Push the floor away, broaden those shoulder blades, and keep going. So the trick is to do this without moving your spine. So you're not trying to over round the thoracic, and you're not collapsing into the low back. The only thing that's moving are your shoulder blades, your scapula. We're waking up the muscles under the armpits and between the shoulder blades, the rhomboids and serratus anterior. Okay, so a few more times. Some things that will determine how much or how little movement you get here is just even the shape of your unique rib cage, okay, or your unique spine might make this movement smaller or bigger, or maybe because we have to get a little stronger through these muscles. Now, when you spread the shoulder blades this next time, move your hands forward a little bit. And if it works for you, come into prayer pose. Just come as far as you can for your joints. Your sit bones are reaching toward your heels. Our shoulders are moving into shoulder flexion. The fingers are spread, and the inner hands and the outer hands are evenly grounded. There's a rolling of the upper arms away from the ears. The elbow creases toward the ceiling. Now push into your hands and pull, like you're trying to pull the mat toward your knees. Friction yourself forward. See if you can feel how that turns on the muscles under the armpits and the triceps to pull you forward, and then slide back to prayer. Nice little release for the lower back. Push down and pull back with your hands to pull your rib cage forward to tabletop. Do that again. Exhale back to prayer. And then push down, pull yourself to tabletop. And now let's tuck our toes under. Make sure that the sit bones are tipped up, so you have a little bit of a back bend in the low back. And then lift the knees off the floor and send the yoga mat away from you. Send your hips away from your hands. Open the back of the legs up, down dog. You might need to maintain a little bend in the knees, especially if the hamstrings are on the tighter side or your calves are on the tighter side, in order for the shoulders and the spine to stay organized and long. So with an inhale, bring your knees back to the ground. And with an exhale, take your prayer pose. And then again, push down and pull with your hands, pull yourself forward. Feel the under armpit muscles engage, tuck your toes under, shift to down dog, exhale. And one more time, inhale your knees to the ground. And then exhale back to prayer. Good job. All right. So here's the next thing we're going to play with. If it works for you, actually, I have a feeling it might not work for everybody. I need a date. I'm thinking about David, because I know, are your knees okay for you to stand on your knees if you had padding underneath them? Can you give me a thumbs up or like a medium thumbs up? Okay. So Timothy and Debbie, you're my other crew. So if this doesn't work for you, let me know. We're going to be standing on our knees, and then we're going to be taking one leg forward. We're going to practice our agility. So here's the movement. I'm going to show you one version, and then I'm going to show you an alternative in case that works better for you. Okay. So this movement, for knees that are okay with this, we're on our knees, and this is a sneaky quadricep stretch. So if you have tight hip flexors, the quads cross over the hip joint here. They also cross over the knee joint. So when the knee's bent, the quads are getting lengthened. And if they don't want to lengthen, they pull the hips forward, and then we might throw the shoulders back, and then the low back is bummed. So draw your pubic bone and your front hip bones toward your ribs a little. So low abdomen and glutes are engaged here, and the front ribs come down. So we're nice and neutral. We're not tucked. We have a little curve in the low back, but we're working a little bit to be here. Your hands come into genie arms, and we're going to be rotating with an exhale and then inhaling and coming back to the center. So we're going to do that a few times. And after a while, I'm going to have you add bringing a leg forward when you come back to the center, and then it goes under you and you turn. So that's where we're headed. So we're going to go there, but I want to show you an alternative just in case it's better for you. The alternative is you're on your feet. So that takes the knees out of the equation, and you do your genie turn. And when you come back to the center, instead of stepping forward into a lunge, you're going to step backward into a lunge. And then you come forward and you do a genie turn. Okay, and then you go backward. It's all a bunch of stability work. I'm going to be on the ground with the knees. Okay, so here we go. The arms are genie arms. We feel that tone in the low abdomen and in the glutes and in the upper abdomen. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, turn to the left. As you turn your rib cage to the left, feel your left hip bone trying to move forward. And then inhale, come back to center. And exhale, turn to the left again. Feel the abdomen and the deep rotatories working, and inhale, come back to center. We'll add on. So exhale, turn to the left. And when you inhale and come back to center, can you step your left leg forward? Maybe a little wobbly. We're going to try it again. Can your knee come under you, and exhale, turn to the left, and inhale back to the center and step your knee forward, or your foot forward, excuse me, and then come back and turn. So it's balancy. This is agility, trying to stay stable and balanced as we're moving through space. One more time. And again, some of you might be standing and doing the twist and then stepping backward into the lunge. All right, back to the center, release. Bring your hands to the ground. take a down dog, come off your knees for a moment, just giving a little break. And then bring your knees back to the earth. And walk your hands in and find your genie kneeling position again with the weird forearm on top, the one that feels a little strange. And again, feel a little tone from pubic bone to sternum and sternum to pubic bone, not so you feel like you flattened your lower back, but just so you feel like you're supporting neutral. Inhale, and active exhale, turn the ribs to the right, but feel your right hip bone coming forward. And then inhale back to the center. Exhaling, twisting to the right with the ribs, but the front hip comes forward, and inhale back to the center. Do that again, and we'll add our step. Exhale, twist. And as you inhale, come back to the center, step your right leg forward, and then bring the knee back underneath you. It's okay if it takes a little wiggle, and then rotate, and then just trying to make it a little quieter, a little less wobbly each time. Again, feeling the tone of the low abdomen and your gluteal muscles to help keep that pelvis organized. That was a big wobble for me. We'll do one more. And when you're done, release. And we'll take one more down dog. So walk your hands out. You know, you can be on your yoga mat, toes tuck under, downward facing dog. Broadening the balls of the feet, lengthening the soles of the feet, moving the thigh bones back toward the wall behind you. Feel how that pulls the pelvis off the shoulders and tractions the spine. And then when you're ready, bring your knees down, and we're gonna swing our legs around. And you can move your knee padding off to the side. Again, unless you like having a little soft under you, you can unfold a blanket. We're gonna lie down. And let's have a block. We're gonna put the block between our legs. So we're gonna wake up our inner legs. We already woke up our outer hips. Now we're waking up what we think of as the inner hips, the adductor muscles that connect to our psoas, and they connect to our pelvic floor muscles. Important to keep these inner thigh muscles strong and also long. So from here, your feet are planted, they're in line with your two sit bones, and they're parallel. And you can kind of tip and tuck your pelvis again. Do a little more tipping and tucking, and come back to neutral. So you feel like there's a little breezeway under your waistband. It's not huge. And then feel around for your low back ribs, maybe with your thumbs, and feel how the low back ribs can kind of rest into the floor. And with that, that's without flattening that lumbar curve. And maybe find your front ribs with your hands, that part, especially in the front, where they tend to kind of, they might really spread and jut up in many of us. And so we want to just invite them to kind of narrow in. It's not a stifling movement. It doesn't have to be really aggressive, but they soften to the midline, they soften down, and we feel the low back ribs come into the floor. Okay, maybe breathe into your low back ribs. That's the back of your diaphragm, by the way, where the back of the respiratory diaphragm knits into the low back rib cage. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're just going to bend the elbows like you're making robot arms. Let's call them robot arms. And you want to feel your scapula are on your rib cage. They're not squeezing toward your spine. They feel like they're on your rib cage. And you're going to press the whole back of your arm, from the back of the shoulder to the tip of the elbow. If possible, you're going to just press that whole back of the arm down. And as you do that, feel the collarbones open, and notice as you press the back of the arm down, if you pushed your front ribs up, and can you let them soften back down? So you're just letting the back of the arms are pressing down, the front ribs are staying soft. And now notice what you feel. What's engaging on the back of your body? Just notice where you feel the effort. So what we're activating here, if you're firming down, are your triceps. So that's the arm muscles that help to pull the arms back, and also the latissimus. Okay, and the latissimus is this huge flank muscle. It runs from the pelvic rim and the lumbar spine all the way up to the upper arm bones. You just feel that. Now start to feel your feet firming down, especially the heels and the pelvis and the ribs. Everything's nice and neutral. And on your next inhale, start to feel the pelvis lighten. It starts to lift up. You're hugging the block with inner legs. You're going to send the thighs and the block forward. The arms are pressing down, the feet are imprinting down, and then exhale, lower the hips down. And inhale, lift them. So sometimes I have you do this and we peel the spine up and then we lower it down vertebra by vertebra. But today we're just maintaining a nice neutral lumbar curve. And we're lifting up with the inhale and we're lowering with the exhale. And we're trying not to flare the front ribs. You can feel the back of the skull firming down. And just feeling, can you feel when you really imprint your heels down and the big toe balls down? Can you feel how that connects you to your gluteal muscles? Can you keep the sit bones from gripping toward the tailbone? And one way of doing that is to hug the block a little bit more and wrap the block toward the floor rather than squirting it up toward the ceiling. Let's do 2 more. So we press the feet down, we press the back of the arms down, we lift the pelvis up. This again is really nice balancing work. Thinking of SI joints again, David. As long as you are working evenly with your right leg and left leg, notice if one foot's imprinting down more than the other, or if one inner leg is hugging the block more than the other. Can we be even in our efforts? One more time. I think I already told you one more time and I made you do like 5 more, but that's okay. And then when you're ready, release. And let's pull that block out. Good job. Take a breath, just feel your heart beating, feel any warmth that's built up in your body from spinal extension, working to extend the spine against gravity. And give your knees a little hug and rock them from side to side. And I have one more movement for us, okay? So this one, we're going to come on to our abdomen. Now, this is another place where if your thoracic spine, this kind of region through here, remember it naturally has a little bit of a convex curve to it compared to the low back that has a convex or a concave curve. And for some of us, it's more pronounced, and it might be more stiff. And so when you lay on your abdomen, like we're going to in this next moment, and you try to do what I'm going to invite you to do, which is to kind of lift your chest off the ground. If you're really stiff through here, it can be hard to move, and it can be kind of uncomfortable. Like your face is kind of feels like it's getting, you can't breathe because there's nowhere for your face to go. I'm saying all this because there's a really nice propping that you can do for yourself. So if you know your thoracic spine is a little stiffer or more pronounced, you can put a blanket, if you fold it up the long way like this, and you put it down on your mat. What it does is, and I think it's blending in with my mat, you can't really see, but it creates this little shelf. It's like an inch. You could put even another blanket on there, and it gives you a little bit of room. So there's room for your face, right? And then we're going to be working on doing a little bit of arm and shoulder and spinal extension here. So if you like the blanket idea, put that down for yourself and lie on it so the blanket and your shoulders are aligned with your shoulders on right at the edge of the blanket. If you don't need it, don't worry about it. It's never cheating to use props, by the way. You're just giving yourself what you need so you can really benefit from these shapes and movements we're doing. So the legs are going to be about mat width wide. They're long. Tops of the feet are on the ground. The quads are engaged. You're reaching the legs out of the hips. So there's this sense of length. The tailbone maybe is reaching toward the heels. And we're going to take those arms and make those cactus arms we made earlier. And As you inhale, think about the front of your spine lengthening forward and lifting up. So just don't worry about the arms right now. Just think about maybe push down and pull back with the arms or the forearms just gently to feel like your front of the spine is lengthening forward out of the pelvis and floating up, and then lower down. And do that again. Think about lengthening the spine forward and floating up. This is strengthening our extensor muscles of the spine. These are the muscles that help us with our posture, hold us upright so our head can align over the spine and our neck and shoulders can feel less strain. Now, the next time you float up, let's stay up. It doesn't have to be high. Look how low I am. I'm really low. And draw your shoulder blades down your back and see if you can take your forearms off the ground, making sure it's not coming from this part of your neck. Think about your shoulder blades kind of coming toward the spine. They don't need to squeeze. And then lower everything down with your exhale. And then do that again. So the legs are long, the tail is long, and you're inhaling and you're floating up, and you're exhaling and you're lowering down. And you don't have to lift as high as me. It might just be that you're lifting a half an inch and up with the inhale and down with the exhale. And if your low back feels like it's working, you probably need a little more abdominal engagement. Think about what we were doing earlier, pubic bone toward sternum, pelvic floor might lift up a little bit. We also don't want to flatten the low back. So just 2 more, lifting, lowering, trying to feel those scapula moving on the ribs, coming toward the spine, but not into the ears. And that's using gravity to create a little resistance. Good. And then rest. Turn your cheek to one side, rest. Feel your heart beating. Always energizing those back bends. When you're ready, roll all the way back onto your back body. Give your knees another hug. So you're just going to flip over. We're going to counter pose all that spinal extension, just giving the knees a hug. Rocking from side to side. Okay, and then you can maybe do a few more circles. And then it's time for us to rest and be still for a few minutes in Shavasana, or relaxation pose. So feet can come to the ground, and if your lower back feels like it needs a little support, you might want to keep the knees bent. You could put a blanket or a roll or some blocks under your knees if you want to let them relax and you want some support, or just keep the knees bent. You could stretch the legs out long if that feels okay for your low back. Let the legs be a little wider than hip width apart, turned out, so the legs and the hip muscles can just relax completely. And then remember the arms we made for bridge pose. Push them down, that kind of 90-degree bend at the elbows, and use that downward push to traction your ribs away from your pelvis. So you get a little spinal traction, and then lengthen your head away from your shoulders. And then you can just let those arms relax. The shoulder blades relaxing down out of the ears. The palms could roll up, or the hands could come to the belly if that sounds good. The eyes close or the gaze softens. And deep breath in, and the exhale, an invitation to let go. To let go of effort or strain, to let go of that physical effort or strain, and any mental tension, any planning, any remembering, any daydreaming. That we can let go of any grip on a thought that feels really important, and know that it will be there for us in just a little while. We can be in the body right now. We can be in this moment, hearing the sounds, feeling what we feel physically. Resting. When you're ready, you can take a nice deep breath in and then let it go. Start to wiggle into your fingers and toes and bend your knees when you're ready and rolling onto one side or the other. And you can press the floor away when you're ready and find a comfortable seat, giving yourself whatever support you need, maybe a blanket to sit on or a block or a chair. So your pelvis can be level and upright, because then your spine can have all of its natural curves intact. And then your shoulder girdle can sit in a way that's nice and balanced on top of that balanced rib cage, ears over the shoulders. The breath can be at ease with the diaphragm balanced from front to sides to back. And the lungs, lots of room to fill and empty. A sense of groundedness as you root down into the sit bones, maybe with your next exhale. And a sense of liftedness or rising, a buoyancy with your next inhale, lengthening through the crown of the head. And with another breath in, we'll roll our palms skyward, and exhaling, the hands might come together in front of the heart. They could even come together to rest on top of the heart, and feeling that kindness or that warmth, sending yourself some comfort and friendship, and compassion. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Namaste.